which, like, I don't know, a lot of men that were, like, you know, prosecuted in the Salem witch trial, but, so this is, and she's a Pulitzer Prize winner, posthumously, maybe? No, not posthumously. So, not mine, but my favorite. I have gone out a possessed witch, haunting the black air, braver at night. Dreaming evil, I've done my hitch over the plain houses, light by light. Lonely thing, 12-fingered, out of mind. A woman like that is not a woman quite. I've been her kind. I have found the warm caves in the woods, filled them with skillets, carvings, shelves, closets, silks, innumerable goods. Fixed the suppers for the worms and the elves, whining, rearranging the disaligned. A woman like that is misunderstood. I've been her kind. I have ridden in your cart, driver, waved my nude arms at villages going by, learning the last bright routes, survivor, where your flames still bite my thigh, and my ribs crack where your wheels wind. A woman like that is not ashamed to die. I have been her kind.
And of course, since we're talking about vaginas a lot, my son left. He's forgotten. This next speaker and I met because I read a story about her in a now defunct Long Beach magazine called Long Beach Magazine. Very creative title. And it was a story about a place that I'd never heard of before. I mean, not just I'd never heard of it in Long Beach, I had never heard of it in the world. And it had this crazy name, the Long Beach Depot for Creative Reuse. I'm like, what on earth? But I looked at this woman and I read her story and I had to meet her. And I went by many times until the doors were open. And I'm going to say that's about 10 years ago. And I could still call on her to be my one anytime. Anytime, night or day. She's also the only other person I know who despises people riding on the sidewalk on their bike as much as I do. In her neighborhood, which is the East Village, she will put her body in front of your bike. Now, I don't do that on Pine often, but if you've ever walked on Pine with me, I am not a nice person about that. So I'm happy to have a sister who's a Spitfire, an activist, and a partner to Mother Earth, Lisa Hernandez.
Well, thank you, Michelle, for inviting me. And also Heather for running this great place. I mean, it's just when Michelle asked me to come here, you know, I always, like people who know me at the shop, I always just fly by the seat of my pants. They always ask me questions. What was your motivation to start the shop? What is creative reuse? And how did you even get here? Because I'm a transplant from the Bay Area. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area. And so creative reuse was just in my blood. And so one of the stories that people always really like for me to share is how did I get exposed to creative reuse? What was that all about? So when I was a kid, my dad, we used to think that he was really Mr. Cheap because he didn't want to buy us anything. Everything was in the garage, and he was just part of this whole activism. And I know a lot of you are probably familiar with Cesar Chavez and that whole movement. Well, in the Bay Area, we also did protesting and so forth. And I was probably maybe 7, 8 years old, and my dad worked with Cesar Chavez, and he was really into the whole movement, and he wanted to do something which was make the signs. So I don't know if you probably not know about this, but if you look at old vintage pictures of the movement and the signs that were made for the protesting for the United Farm Workers and the Cesar Chavez and so forth, there are some signs that you might find that you see that are round. So there was these round Huelga signs, you know, the strike and the eagle and everything. And those round Huelga signs came from our garage. Because when I was growing up, my dad was like, I gotta make the signs, but I don't wanna do it square, I wanna be different. And so then we were like, well, Dad, because we were the assembly line to help make that. I said, what about, you know, why don't we make them round and use the top of the garbage can lid as, you know, the stencil? Because he would collect all the cardboard from Cahill Construction Company, which my grandfather was a foreman for. And so he would go down there in the truck and pick up all the cardboard, bring it to the garage, and then my little brother, the youngest, because I have two brothers, he would sit on top of the garbage can lid, and then we would take the pencils and, you know, do this whole thing, right? And so then my dad would cut it out, and he had the stencil for the UFW sign. And then my dad also did the tree plantings in San Francisco. So you know, tree plantings, when they're little, they have the sticks. A little different back then, but now they're like really thick. But back then it was kind of like little picket kind of, you know. Anyways, he would collect all those after the trees were able to stand up on their own, and he would bring them home and cut them in half, and then we were the original stick dippers, because he had the garbage can full of green paint, and it had to be this particular dark green paint. So we would stick those sticks into the garbage can full of paint and then line them up all against the wall. So that's how my first recollection of creative reuse was, using stuff that already was, you know, used and then reusing it for another purpose. And one of the things that, you know, talking about feminine and things like that, my dad, I was the oldest and I had two brothers. And so in my dad's eyes, he wanted me, because I was a girl, he wanted me to be like a guy. So he would train me in the garage, punching the sandbag and saying, you know what, and I'd have to wrap him up, and he'd say, I need you to be tough. You have to take care of your brothers, and I don't want you to be a sissy. You hear me, hear me? And so he was like constantly training me for that. And then also, he would have me learning, I would have to spend Wednesdays with Dad, learning how to do his checkbook and doing all the papers and all that. And I was like 8 years old, 8, 9 years old, you know, and I want to be out with my friends. So that was kind of hard, because, you know, sometimes people say, oh, your dad must have been your mentor. And I go, yeah, he was my mentor. I learned a lot from him in the hard way, but he was also my tormentor. Because, yeah, it's stuff, you know. So I was always like trying to find a way to get him to accept me as a girl versus a guy kind of thing. So I was like a tomboy all the time. And then, you know, it was just the craziest thing, because when I could get a loose from my dad, the next thing I wanted to do was just go to where typically I was attracted to, like the baseball and, you know, all the typically boys sports. And so he would get on me again, and then my mom would say, well, now you're being a tomboy, so you need to wear dresses, and you need to dress up, and you need to know how to cook. And I was like, you know what, screw you people, I don't cry, I'm gonna go in the streets. So that's what happened. I ended up hanging out in the streets, in the gangs, doing my thing, learning how to make money, you know, like selling, I was selling permission slips in school. Because I learned that through all the stuff that I went through with my dad, that the importance of connections. And so I always made connections, you know, with the people that work in the office and so forth. So I tell them, hey, you know, so a little gangster. And I was selling for 10 cents a signature. But I was really also a good student in certain classes where they entrusted me to, you know, clean the room and everything. So my favorite teacher was a drafter, because I took drafting in school. And so he entrusted me with the classroom. And of course, if you know about drafting, you know, they have those light desks. So it's easy to forge signatures and stuff. So that's where my office was. I was doing that and making money. So, but yeah, so I was making money. But one of the things that, real thing that a lot of the young students that come in and they're listening to Chicano Studies is that they like the part where when we were picketing in front of the stores, you know, the Safeways, we're kids, and back in the 60s, they didn't care. They just dropped the kids off, and the women, the moms, everybody would take off. But my dad, he had us during the day, so he had us with those signs, picketing in front of Safeway, you know, no grapes and blah, 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 all that stuff. And the reason we were able to do it so effectively was on top of making us work every summer in the fields. You know, we used to hate that, but then it was another way to make money. But I realized later why my dad had us working in the fields, because he was getting us ready to do the protesting, so that if somebody comes up to us and asks us, why are you doing this? We can honestly tell them the truth. Hey, we work in the field. There's only one outhouse. We don't, you know, we don't have nothing but tortillas from my grandmother, you know, and water, and it's a lot of hard work, and we have to work fast, and we're just kids. So he wanted that in us, and that was good. You know, it worked out. I always try to look positive. And so this one time I remember I was with my brothers, and we were picketing in front, you know, no grapes, wild cat, you know, doing all that. And here, some of you might already know, I'm half Japanese and half Mexican, so a lot of people back then, they thought it was like Chinese. So this one lady, I remember, she came up to my brothers and I, so we're typically looking like three Chinese kids, and she comes up to us and she says, little girl, excuse me, come over here. And I said, yes. And she goes, why are you doing this? Where are your parents? And I go, oh yeah, they're way over there. They're doing some stuff over there. I lie, you know, because that's what we were told. If anybody asks, I'm over there. So anyways, my dad was off with Cesar Chavez doing something, but that was our job, you know. So she goes, oh, but why are you doing this? And I go, well, now picture me, little brat, about this tall, and I put my hand on my hip, and I'm saying, well, do you know how hard it is to work in the fields? And it's not safe, and it's dirty, and I even got lice in my hair, so you're not supposed to, you know, get any grapes, and don't do anything, because they don't take care of us in the fields. And the lady goes, oh my God, okay. And I was going to go on, and she goes, no, I won't go in, it's okay. And then she ran, she left, she didn't go shopping in there. So it was kind of funny, little kid, right? So we were taught as little kids how to talk to adults about, I guess, injustice, stuff like that, you know, and to really know from the heart, you know, how it feels. So I always ended up having a lot of empathy for people. I can sense it. I can sense, like, even from me being a product of domestic violence, not me, but in my family, all that craziness. And, you know, I can always sense when a kid has been, you know, like, all that, you know, because I sense it because I went through that. So anyways, but that was kind of like the funny story about creative reuse, how we started it all. But anyways, speaking of domestic violence, I guess we'll be hearing a little bit more about that. Did I run out of time yet?
No, I was just going to ask you.
To go on?
People who don't know about your shop, talk a little bit about it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Self-permission slips. Got the best permission slips in town. You get pulled over, just show them.
Yeah, growing up, I did to prove this, you know, like, tough. I wanted to be the first female Master Sergeant of the Air Force, senior female Master Sergeant of the Air Force. So I joined the military, and so I was in there, and it really helped me insofar as inventory and all that kind of fun stuff. So then when I got out, and then later on I decided to have a kid, which she was planned. I was an oops baby, but she was planned. And so people trip out on how I did that, but that's another story. She's laughing. But the reason I started the depot was because of her. It was inspiration. You know, I was in between jobs. My last job was in human resource, and I uncovered some fraudulent stuff. I'm really good at doing that because I used to do forensic audit work as well. So I was like, you know what, I need to go. So I decided, what is going to be good for my soul? Tired of working for other people, making them lots of money, working my butt off to make them rich, and here I'm making like $15 an hour, and I'm taking care of 150 employees by myself. It's like, what? So if you want to work all those hours, you can do it yourself. Have your own business, do that. So I could do that. And so my daughter was like, why don't we have that little shop, make our little shop like Mr. Myrtle. Now, there's an old story, believe it or not, back in the day, I think I was in second grade, and it's a story called Mr. Myrtle's Large Heart. And it's about a little shop that this little man has that has all these little things that you just can't find anyplace else. That was my favorite story as a kid. I liked it so much, and I will admit it to you, I do have the original book that I stole from school. It's still, I loved it so much. So I'll show you the book. It's a magic carpet. Anyways, so I love it, and then I used to read that to her, and she was like, "Oh my God, we should do that." And I'm like, So coming from the Bay Area, there's two big places. There's the East Bay Depot for Creative for Use in Oakland, and then there's Scrap in San Francisco. They are the original godparents of Creative for Use. So I grew up, because when I was a PTA crazy mom volunteer with her school back then, I would go to those places and get a lot of materials for the teachers. So when I thought about it, I said, wow, and we can turn it into like a mom and pop kind of small versus big. But then, like Michelle said, there was nothing down here. So I was like, well, it's going to take a leap of faith. So that's basically one of the biggest things that we have been able to make it these 10 years is really from faith. I always believe, like when I talk to students, and also a lot of people ask me, you know, like their advice on how to open up one, I tell them you really got to have faith and just believe that everything is going to happen. If there's a dream in your heart, it's there for a reason. And it's not to fail. So you got to stick with it and just do it. So I tell them that, and they're like, yeah, but I go, yeah, I know, it's hard. It's not easy, especially in this city, because